So, a couple of days ago, I met with some elders, and that was really the first time that I had talked to them since leaving. And I made a video about it, and I think I called it something like I'm going to a Judicial Committee meeting because that's what I genuinely thought it was. It turns out it wasn't exactly that, but it 100% is the precursor to the judicial meeting. But anyway, I'm here to update you guys on what happened, what was said, how it went, how I feel about it, and maybe give a few pointers or tips to anyone that might be facing a similar situation. So run the intro. So before I even went, I made that video and got a lot of comments, and I made a Facebook post and just to see what people had to say about it. And I feel like the majority of people were all saying, don't meet with the elders. They're just sharks trying to, gobble you up, looking for prey. They're company men. They're not going to listen to you. They're not interested in you. They're just doing their job. And while I appreciate, all of the support and, people giving, their take on it and everything, generally speaking, I tend to disagree with people that say, well, there's no point in talking to a Jehovah's Witness or to the elders or anyone because they're just not going to listen to you. And I have always thought that that's just simply not true. Yes, I know that they have thick layers of indoctrination, but I don't think that it is impossible to be broken because here we are. We were able to reason our way out of that indoctrination. So why couldn't someone else? So I always kind of keep that in my mind that, there is a chance that someone could be helped out. Is it going to be through one conversation? No. I'm not crazy. But I think that it's still worthwhile to, really stick your ass in there and have a few talking points and be yourself. So my approach when I was going and meeting with them was that I didn't want to go in with an agenda. I didn't want to go in with like a laundry list of points, talking about, well, I want to talk about child abuse in 1975 and Beth Sareem and 607 and da-da-da-da-da. Because these guys have heard that so many times before. So and it didn't help them. Obviously, they're still in the organization, and these guys are older, so they lived through 1975. They've heard Beth Sareem. They've heard 607. They've heard about child abuse. More on that later. So I don't think that, talking about those things, really is going to change anything. So I tried to just go in and, as I always do, even in my videos, kind of just go with the flow. So at first, it was all the pleasantries and niceties and, updates and, how everyone was doing. And then they sat down, like, oh, well, should we have a seat? And this was in a public park. And they basically said, well, we're just concerned about your spirituality. And that was Elder 1. We'll just call him 1 and the other guy 2. So immediately Elder 2, because I just didn't really say anything. I just stared at them like with my old classic bug-eyed look into your soul stare. And the Elder 2 said, we know about the website. And Elder 1 immediately tried to bring the level down and said, so let me just tell you a story. And this was a little bit hard for me to hear, just from a perspective, because I do have a lot of respect for this guy. And I think he is he's a great human being. And he told me, oh, yeah, when we were coming back from working at our project in Warwick, and the branch office basically said, okay, well, here's a list of congregations that is in need of help. and the one I was in was on the list. And he knew that me and my brother were there. And he said the deciding factor, even though he didn't want to live in Renton, he didn't want, or even if they didn't live there, traveling there, dealing with the Renton traffic. If anyone's from the Seattle area, they know about the Renton traffic. It's silly. But he said, because I was in that congregation, he felt that that's where he wanted to go. So he shows up, and the first meeting that he shows up to on his new, assignment congregation, they announce that from the platform that I no longer have any of the privileges that I had, or I'm no longer serving in any of the positions that I was serving in. And he was just like, what? Like, what? And then he told me more, that they were sitting down and having a meeting, obviously, because they found the website or the channel. And they had asked him to, actually go and be one of the ones that met with me. And he said, absolutely not. He's like, there's no way I can do it. I would just be too emotional. And then he's like, I prayed about it, and I decided that, this is something that I wanted to do, and I think it would be good. And I want to see Wally, because it's been, 5 years or whatever it's been. Maybe a little bit even longer than that. So he, tells me all of this, and just to sort of soften things up a little bit, because the other guy was like, immediately, we know about the website, where he was trying to actually build that, I do care about you. We have this long history, and I want to know where you're at, where you're coming from. So basically he, positioned it all of that. And then he went and, talked about my family and all of the, different people that, are always asking, well, what about Wally? Where is Wally? How's Wally doing? We care about Wally. We miss him. And then he basically said, do you want to come back? And my response to this is always, yes. Because they're not expecting it. They're expecting me to go off on an apostate rant. And I just say, yes, I do. And then they obviously ask, well, why don't you come back? Well, I want to come back, but I can't come back because of moral, philosophic, and historic reasons. And then they're like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Okay, this was off the cuff, but I think it actually applies pretty well. But the illustration that I gave them is, say you could have a friend that made you comfortable, and they always just made you feel good. But then you found out that they were only lying to you. And that's why you felt so good, because they never actually told you the truth. They just lied to you, and, they kind of kissed you on the cheek and patted you on the bum. And you have another friend that is, trustworthy. They might be a little bit rough around the edges, but that you can trust them 100%. They'll never lie to you. Which one would you pick as a friend? The person that makes you more comfortable, or the person that you can trust? And they're like, well, obviously the person you can trust. Like, okay, well, that's my relationship to the organization. I'm choosing a path of truth and honesty versus comfort. And it's not easy. It's not something that I want to do. Do I want to have my family and friends back? Obviously. Do I want to be able to watch my nieces and nephews grow up? Obviously. But because I value truth more than comfort, I can't. And then inevitably, after they kind of scratch their heads and their nutsacks for a second, it's, well, what do you mean by truth? And then, so Elder 2 said, well, what do you mean by truth? Elder 1 says, well, we don't really want to talk, about doctrine and things like that. Elder 2, they're doing the work for me, which is why I take these sort of paths that I do. Elder 2 jumps in and says, well, I remember hearing about, some of the things you were saying before you stopped coming to the meetings. And they were about, with regard to the child abuse issue. And I said, that is definitely on the moral. So I said, moral, philosophic, and historic. But that is on the moral spectrum. I think that how the Watchtower has handled things is abhorrent. So they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Or, we try and, follow the legal code, blah, 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 all that good stuff. And I just said, no, it's just, there's too many records showing that they don't. So then I broke down one of the cases, where elders knew that someone had been accused multiple times of being a pedophile, moved congregations, and still got appointed as a ministerial servant, put in a position of trust. And the brothers knew about it, and they did nothing. Now, Elder 1 said, like, really? That happened? And I said, yeah. Elder 2 says, well, where did you get this information? I'm glad you asked. I'm a nerd, and I'm an obsessive person. I downloaded all of the documents off of a county court when I saw a news story, because I have a feed on my, when I open up my computer on the day, one's just Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had that for a long time, even when I still was a witness. And then, you see this child abuse thing. And I was like, well, I don't want to look at any apostate websites, so I just went and read all of the documents myself, and that's the one where Garrett Loesch says he's not a member of Watchtower, blah, blah, blah. You guys know what I'm talking about, so I don't need to go in there. But the Elder 1 says, well, what those brothers did was wrong. And it blew me away, because I said, you're exactly right. What was done was wrong. I asked Elder 2, do you agree? He didn't answer. But I'm like, so you say it's wrong. He's like, yeah, what they did is absolutely wrong. You, my friend, are now more of a moral individual than Watchtower. Because do you know how Watchtower responded to this allegation, to this case? They said, no, we didn't do anything wrong. When Garrett Loesch was, subpoenaed to come and answer for his crimes against humanity, he said, I'm not a member of the Watchtower. I mean, it's a signed statement right there. I'm not a member of the Watchtower. And then, of course, I just had to ask, if I gave you a letter right now saying I am not a member of the Watchtower, what would happen? You'd be disassociated. Garrett Loesch, he hands in a letter that says, I'm not a member of Watchtower. What happens to him? Silence. Absolutely nothing. But I could see in Elder 1's face, it really got down to his core. So then he started talking and said, well, I've actually handled cases of, this is so crazy, but he said, I handled cases in, did he say every congregation he served in, on someone that was accused of, anyway, I probably shouldn't say that too often, or else YouTube's not going to like it, of the thing that we're talking about. And he said, even right here in this congregation, which was like, whoa, anyway. And he went down the elder path and said, well, we make sure that we watch them. And I got very passionate at that point and said, that's just not good enough. It does not do enough. It's not effective. the organization has a proven track record that their way of handling it does not work. It doesn't help the problem. It doesn't stop the problem. And it doesn't do the fundamental thing that every society needs to do, and that's protecting children. And he was silent. He just kind of sat there and did this. Like that's a tough one. So then Elder 2 jumps in and says, well, what about some of these other things? And I showed you material on the 607 thing, and I try and steer away from all the major talking points. So like, 607, 587, whatever. Let's just say that doesn't matter to me. It was hard for me to say, but I told them, well, let's just say that, every organization, every society has to deal with the safeguarding of children, and they have problems. So, can you single out this organization? Yes, you can. But a lot of organizations have this issue. So, that's just something that, has to be dealt with. But it's not, let's say none of those things existed. I still have issues with, the organization. And then at this point, I was really cold because we were in a park and it was breezy and we're under a tree, and I was like shivering. So they were like, hey, let's go get some coffee. Boom. We tried to hit a Starbucks. That one was closed. We hit another Starbucks. That one was closed. But we just sat outside. At least it was in the sun and it was fine. So then we jumped right back into the conversation after about 30-minute break in things. Okay, so what things do you say, why can't you trust the organization? I'm like, okay, well, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention one thing in that whole, how's your spiritual health thing. When I was talking about, having friends with someone that you trust, or if you have, someone that just lies to you but makes you feel comfortable. I mentioned to them how frustrating it was that, 2 plus 2 didn't equal 4. And the entire world says 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yet in the organization, everyone says that 2 plus 2 equals 5. And they're the only ones that are saying it equals 5. Now, what evidence do they give for the 5 number? Give me that evidence, and if I can't find any holes in it, then I'll come back to the organization today. Well, we can't go on a point by point by point by point basis. Okay, whatever. Anyway, I forgot to mention that. So we get to the second spot after a bit. Oh, dog barking. Anyway, so we get to the second spot and we're sitting down. Like, well, what, is coming back to the truth thing? What is it do you think doesn't make sense? So I just hit him like, okay, well, do you read the news? Yeah. Okay. Is Damascus a functioning city? Yeah. Okay. In Isaiah 17, it specifically says that, Damascus will cease to be a city. Well, I'd have to look at that a bit more. Okay, well, I'm telling you, you can look at it right now and just read it for your own eyes. It says in there, Damascus won't be a city anymore. And there's been a continuous civilization in Damascus. So what are we talking about? Then the old, well, there's a lot of deep things in the Bible and, we can't understand all of them. And I'm like, yes, we can. We absolutely can understand them. You just have to try. You have to be willing to look at it. So that didn't get too far. I'm like, okay, well, here's another one. Here's another whopper. Oh, wait, no. Well, after that, they're like, so you don't trust the Bible? No, I don't trust the Bible. But is there evidence that I should be able to trust the Bible? Well, I know what you're going to say. It's going to be one of the prophecies, or a prophecy and all of that business, right? Okay, so if that's one of the strongest arguments that you can make for trusting in the Bible, then would you agree with me that every prophecy in the Bible that could be fulfilled to this point has been fulfilled? Elder 2 didn't answer. Elder 1 didn't answer. Like, it's a yes or no question, fellas. Has every prophecy that could be fulfilled been fulfilled in the Bible? Eventually, Elder 1 conceded and said, yes. Yes, it has. Cool. Now I'm going to show you the thing about Tyre. I've talked about it on my channel before, but I'll speed run it. It says specifically in the Bible, Nebuchadnezzar will destroy this city. He's the fist of God. You know, he's just going to go and blast them. And it didn't happen. Nebuchadnezzar did not destroy completely, as it says in the Bible, Tyre. It just didn't happen. So now you agreed with me that every prophecy that could be fulfilled has been fulfilled. I'm telling you, this one has not been fulfilled. So now, who is the trustworthy friend? Who is the one that's trying to just make you comfortable? And the reaction to that was so interesting because both of them, even Elder 2, just couldn't get it through their heads how they could have missed something so blatant and obvious. And I'm going to have to stop the recording now and take care of the barking dog. I'll be right back, though. So I guess I'll just speed run one other doctrinal thing that I brought up, and that has to do with the magic superfruit in Genesis. Because after they couldn't answer that, and they were genuinely just like baffled, they gave the same old, well, I'd have to look into it a bit more. Now I do go in very hard these days when people give me that answer. And so I did tell them that is what every single witness, elder, whoever that I've talked to has said, and they never get back to me. So I mentioned to them, well, I met with you guys a year ago or something, and it was because I mentioned, I was the one that initiated that conversation. I was like, well, yeah, I'd love to talk to the elders because my brother randomly texted me. It was so far out of the blue. Anyway, so we got into a bit of a conversation. And, well, not a conversation, I should say. It was like 3 messages. But hey, when you haven't heard from someone from years, 3 messages feels like a conversation. Anyway, he recommended I, talk to the elders. So I was like, great, I'll do it. But as long as you come, of course, he didn't show up. But anyway, so I talked to the brothers there, blah, 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 and asked them some of the questions that I had about the Bible. They said, oh, okay, well, we don't really, we'd have to look into it a bit more. Okay. How about you guys take some time to look at it, and then, we'll meet again and you can tell me what you come up with. Never heard back from him. My grandpa, I told him about the story of Tyre story. Well, yeah, probably. And he's like, okay, we'll come back next week. I'm going to research it. I come back the next week. He's outside, like gardening or washing his car or something, sees my car, goes inside his house, locks the door. I knock, doesn't answer. So I don't like that line. It drives me insane. Oh, well, let me do some more research and I'll get back to you, because they never do, because they research it. And I just gave them the answer after they said that. I'm like, okay, when you go back and research, you know what it's going to say? It's going to say, well, the Bible was still correct because Alexander the Great destroyed Tyre. So if I prophesy that I'm going to punch Jeff, and Sam comes along and punches Jeff, and I stand there and say, well, my prophecy came true because Jeff was punched, does that make sense? Is that a fulfilled prophecy? Yes or no? Yes or no? Is that a fulfilled prophecy? If Jeff punches Sam, I can't even remember the characters I just made up. It just answer the question. Yes or no? Is it? No. Okay. So the Watchtower's response is that it is a fulfilled prophecy. You just agreed with me that if it was the punching incident, it wouldn't be fulfilled. That's Watchtower's response. Why would I just put blinders on to keep going along with that friend that makes me more comfortable if it's just false? You elders just admitted that a part of Watchtower doctrine is false. And that's when I get a little bit wild. Anyway, so one of the other things that I brought up after, the awe in the face. Now, to his credit, Elder 1 didn't try and do any song and dance or you gotta have faith. When I was talking, he was really listening. He was really intensely listening. It wasn't the normal, I'm talking to a Jehovah's Witness and they do the glazed eyes thing. He never got the glazed eyes. Not even once. He was compassionate and understanding and actually listening. So that was pretty cool. So then the other thing, I'll speed run that and I'll get to the more emotional bits here in a second. Because I had to even remove myself a few times due to the excess of tears. But anyway, we'll get there in a second. So the other doctrinal point was the magic superfruit. Because it's well, can you trust the Bible? Back to that. Well, no, I can't trust someone's interpretation of the Bible. Is there a scripture that you can point to me that gives man the authority to say that something is literal or figurative in the Bible itself? So if the Bible is God's word, he doesn't actually come down and talk to us, but he talks to us through the Bible. Then assuming, that's my mindset, I have to take the Bible, I need to take the Bible seriously at face value. So unless someone can provide a scripture that says, yes, a little piece of carbon on this planet has the authority to say this is literal and this is figurative, I'm going to read the Bible and take it at face value. And they agreed with me. Wow, I'm talking to elders and they're agreeing with me. So then I was like, okay, go to Genesis and we won't make it through the first three chapters. And you, if you have this mindset and agree that you can't interpret things, will agree that the Watchtower's narrative does not comport with what is actually in the Bible. Okay, the creation accounts. That didn't go anywhere. They were definitely prepared for that. So I just blew right past it. I'm like, okay, well, let's just jump to Genesis 3. So as you're reading this, God says that in the day that they eat the fruit, they will die. They don't die. Satan says, the day that you eat the fruit, your eyes are bound to be opened and you'll know good and bad. When they ate the fruit, their eyes were opened and they were able to know they were good and bad. So if that's all that we had, what would be the conclusion about who was being deceptive or who was lying with just that information? Well, I don't know. Okay, then I just explained it again. Like, okay, well, if that's all the information that we had, then it would seem that, Satan was telling the truth. We'll give you that point. Okay, cool. And then they went on this weird, or Elder 2 went on this weird rant about, well, the organization already knows or has explained, what that word day means, and the day that you eat from the fruit that you'll die. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad you brought that up, because my next question is then, why did Adam and Eve die? Well, because sin. Cool. Let's read the account and let's see what God says. And remember, you cannot interpret this. You cannot add anything. You can't take anything away from it. Read the verse that says, well, we have to kick them out from the garden because they've become like us, and we don't want them to eat from the tree of life so that they don't live forever. So in the Genesis account, it says that the reason that Adam and Eve died was because they couldn't eat from magic superfruit, and it has nothing to do with sin. Later on in the Bible, it talks about, inherited sin and all of that stuff, but that's a later interpretation. Have you guys heard of this? Have you guys considered this? No, I haven't. Okay, we set all the parameters beforehand. We're 3 chapters into the Bible, and we're already talking about things that you don't understand. We're already mentioning accounts that you can't explain with Watchtower propaganda. Elder 2 crossed his arms and kind of squinted and was a little bit sneering. Elder 1 absolutely was like, huh. That's interesting. Wow. At this point, I really started to question whether or not he might be someone that's physically in but mentally out. As I sat there, I thought to myself, he could be someone that's using these pseudonyms and commenting on my YouTube page. He could actually be, because he's not doing the Watchtower dance. Or I am so smart and I'm so great at talking to people that I'm actually getting through to him. That's probably not the case. But you know what? We plant those seeds of doubt, and you know what we do with them? I can't see it. You let it grow, baby. I don't know if it was in focus. If it wasn't, then we'll just cut that out. Anyway, so on to the more emotional parts, because inevitably they do the whole, your family and everyone misses you. And what do you think they will feel when they see your YouTube channel? And I said, I don't think it'll change anything. You said, you don't think that when they see that you're, posting apostate videos, that it's going to change how they think about you? I'm like, no. They absolutely don't care. In one of my previous videos, I think it was part 3 called Waking Up from Jehovah's Witnesses and Leaving Watchtower, I told the story about my grandma, and I retold that to him. And the elder, because I was obviously in tears talking about that and mentioning how, everyone just threw me away like a piece of garbage. They just said, Wally is asking questions that we can't answer. Therefore, he is a piece of absolute garbage. And for those of you that don't know, I do struggle pretty hard with just depression and self-confidence. So the fact that people can just throw you away you don't matter, and people that should care about you don't, it affects me harder than most, I think, because if none of that happened, I would still think I was a piece of shit and wake up and tell myself that every day. But just the fact that they can go beyond, the Watchtower, beyond their own indoctrination, and just say, yeah, we don't care about him. We're just going to toss him aside like he's nothing. It was, anyway, at this point, I had to remove myself from the conversation with them because I was getting a little charged. But anyway, with all of that, Elder 1 he was tearing up himself. he could sense my passion. And when I get excited, I really start going on my rants. And I guess if you guys watch any of my videos, you know that I like a good rant. But I just went in just with this red face, tears, snot coming out of my nose, just telling them how difficult it is to be cast aside and be completely shunned by your friends and your family and be seen as a crazy person or someone that's been infected by Satan. And all that I did was read the Bible. That's my crime. I followed the Watchtower's instruction. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I read and I researched and I studied and I studied. I followed their guidelines when you're having doubts. Research, pray, study. Research, pray, study. And I did it obsessively. And for following Watchtower's guidance and not being willing to sacrifice my humanity and my morality and my love of truth and honesty, this is the reward. This is what I get for being the best that I could possibly be. I worked harder than, I would say, 99% of witnesses have ever worked in their entire lives in the span of like 6 months or 4 months or whatever it was, to be the very best witness I could possibly be. Like, to the point when sleep didn't matter. Personal, personal self-care out the window. Nothing mattered more to me than being the best witness I possibly could be and learning as much as I possibly could learn and understanding it. And it led me to see that it wasn't real. It was a friend that was making me comfortable but wasn't telling me the truth. And at that point, with the tears just streaming down and them not having an answer to any of this, obviously, what can you say? What could you say if someone looks you in the face and says, I know the Bible better than you, and I know the Watchtower better, like their material better than you? I just do. Challenge me on any single point, and I promise you, I will be able to defeat you in this, because I've done the work, and you haven't. But if you do, you might be surprised if you really dig deep. And I stopped my red-faced harangue, and I just said, this is probably pointless. Why am I doing this? I don't think you guys are even really hearing me. It's crazy to think about, but no matter how much you think that you care about me, this still isn't going to reach you. And I said that with a little bit of like gathering myself and thinking, hey, Elder One actually seems to be listening. I am going to say this and just see how he reacts. And he absolutely was gutted inside. You can tell when someone, like, everything drops, like your heart drops and your stomach you lose feeling in your entire body. Everyone's probably had that feeling where your face just goes pale and everything just goes whoosh, like you get tingly. Anyone can recognize this. It doesn't take a particular amount of insider skill. And this man had that moment. Everything just fell out. Like he might have peed himself a little bit. Hopefully he was wearing a diaper. Because that passion and that energy And all of it made sense to him. Like, it was all things that, one point sort of builds on the next, and it makes perfect sense. And you could see in his face that moment where it's like, oh my God, he's not a crazy apostate. He's a sad, broken, abused kid. I know I'm like 30, but in his eyes, he's known me since I was a kid. But he's just a sad kid that's gotten a raw deal. I mean, he just got completely raw by Watchtower for the crime of reading the Bible. And I couldn't believe what I was like seeing when I saw how much what I was saying was affecting him. The other elder had not really the same reaction at all. His case is a little bit different because he's probably in it mostly because, anyway, I won't tell too much about it, but his wife tragically died in like a very short period of time, and he had 2 kids at the moment, and basically, like, yeah, that you lose your best friend, and the crust that gets on your personality bread is so thick. And he needs to believe in Watchtower because that's how he's coping with it. And he hasn't found a way to cope with it in a healthier way. So Watchtower is his drug at that point. But that's not necessarily his fault. It's just a really bad set of circumstances that kind of wedged him into this corner. But this other guy, Elder One, he absolutely like felt it. I know this video is turning into a really long thing, so I'll try and pick it up. But there was a few more things said. Nothing of like too much consequence. Mostly they were letting me talk so much, so I just briefly I talked about how truth being so important to me. That's what motivated me to start the channel, and telling them how I'm actually helping people now. Like I can tell you for a fact that I am helping people, which is something like that's really like fundamentally important to me. And it's probably has something to do with my depression because I don't care about myself really that much. And so in order to combat that, I just focus my energy into trying to help other people. So just even for how small this channel is and how few people are watching it, it's nice to know that one thing that I value so much in myself is that ability to assist and help people and, put a smile on their face, even though there's tears in my eyes. That's still completely worth it to me. So yeah, anyway, we won't go too far down that road, but yeah, I'm picking it back up. Come on, Wally, get it together. Anywho, so eventually, know what's coming. They ask me, well, do you, believe in God? I said, well, which God? Well, Jehovah. So you're talking about the God of the Bible? Yes. Do I believe in the God of the Bible? Let me put it to you like this. If the God of the Bible exists, I would not worship him. Any God that can promote slavery, that can promote genocide, that can say, we just had a civil war between the Israelite tribes, and because we feel sorry for the Benjamites now, we're going to go and murder everyone except for the virgins of 2 different cities just so we can take them and give them as wives. Any God that can allow that to happen and sit there and smile, I think is an absolute monster. And if he does exist, I'll take whatever punishment that he wants to give me, because I am too moral of a person to be able to sit there and just nod my head and say, okay, please don't hurt me. I would rather take the pain than worship that kind of God. And obviously they were just like, one interesting thing, I gave Elder One a big hug. He looked me in the eyes and said, I don't think you're a bad person. So I know who you are, and you haven't changed. Like you still are a good person. And I said, I think I'm a better person now. And he looked at me and thought about it and said, well, you've grown. Oh, I think we're running out of battery. Oh boy. Or recording limit. Okay, well, I'll speed it up. Anyway, he looked at me and basically said, well, you've grown. And I was like, well, I think I've grown into a better person. And he didn't say anything. So that was encouraging. I got to wrap this up because my camera's about to die and I'm trying to go on a hike. So I probably need to wrap this up anyway. So there's the update. That's how it went. They did mention that they're going to be that they may be contacting me shortly after they meet again with the elders. So I'm sure that this was the investigation, and then the actual Judicial Committee is coming up. But I probably won't go to that. I might. I don't know. We'll kind of see what happens. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. Stay excellent, and we will see you next time. Peace.